I'm here with Backbone at an interesting time. You guys just or not just, but a couple of days ago, managed to qualify once again for the playoffs. Once again, outperforming your resources, maybe even outperforming, I would say, the predictions that a lot of folks had before the play-ins. You once again surprised folks. And therefore, I think chronologically, we should start with the general season and how you did there. Because for a while, it felt like you really had to fight for even the playing qualifications. So now in hindsight, how satisfied are you with your season?
I think like overall as a season with the result we've got at the end, I'm actually quite happy with it. I wish we got it cleaner or in a different way, maybe the first stage not being quite how it was, but at the beginning of the year we were saying that even if we didn't qualify for playoffs, like if we had like a good year with play-ins or something, it could still be a good season. So to make playoffs again, I think we're all really happy with.
For sure. In terms of the season, so I remember whenever I talked to Chris, it was like, okay, doing it in the first season, that's comparatively easier. Running it back and having a second follow-up season where, the hype of the moment and the underdog story isn't maybe as novel as it once was as a compelling season. Did it feel harder to get to the playoffs this time than last time?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I don't know how different it'd have been if we were playing Rein from the start, but it definitely in general felt harder to get there this time than last year. Last year was comparatively quite easy. That we had quite. I think we got lucky quite a bit last year as well. That made things a lot easier to get to playoffs and stuff. So definitely a lot easier last year than this year.
I remember Chris had this analogy where he said, like,
Mario Kart speed boosts.
yes. Did you not get
Yeah.
Mario Kart? So let me explain to the viewers that haven't seen this. The analogy of Mario Kart Speed Boost is you guys, whenever your maybe your temperament was, or like your attitude or your mood within the team was maybe slowing down a little bit, you got like a big win, and therefore like it boosted up again, right?
Yeah.
And
Whenever
this,
something bad would happen, we'd get a speed boost to put us back on track last year.
yeah, and this time it felt like it was a little bit more streaky generally, right? So was it harder because of that?
Yeah. I mean, like, you look back at last year and it's like we lose our first game of the season, then we instantly win against Vancouver dominantly. Like, we just barely made, like, we beat Atlanta. It was really good. Like, we got a lot of hype off that, like, as a team and stuff. Like, a lot of, I guess, like, faith in the process and, like, faith in the team. But then this year, it's like, when you only win 2 games in the first stage, it's a lot harder to get that result that kind of, like, propels you forward and, like, gives you some momentum to keep going.
Yeah, makes sense. How would you say does this season compare to you personally? Both as a player and like as a person trying to navigate this? Was it hard? Were there any hardships that you felt you had to overcome specifically this season?
I found the first half of the season really, really challenging. I found it harder to like play the game, harder to want to play the game. Just yeah, it was just harder to. Everything was just harder. Like I found being out here harder. I found like not seeing my family and shit harder. Because when everything was going well last season, it was a lot easier to tolerate the things that you wanted that you missed, right? It was like, oh, I miss seeing friends back home, but it's like, oh, out here everything's so great. But when it's not going great and you're missing stuff at the same time, it can kind of compact together. So it was just a lot harder in general this year.
Feels like there's like an aura of uncertainty looming over the league generally, just because of the uncertain future next year. Of course, we know that like due to the quarterly report that there's a possibility that the Overwatch League will be dissolved and teams will be paid out. Therefore, there's a lot of uncertainty also introduced, I imagine, to players like you. So, do you think that also sort of was on your mind and something that you considered this year?
Yeah, when that came out, it didn't exactly help because a lot of players have good backup options and stuff. I wouldn't say that I have the best backup options, so hearing that wasn't the best and kind of it didn't help.
Sure. How have you talked about it as a team, and how are you coping with that situation?
I think we're kind of just at a point now where it's like everyone's in the attitude of one last ride. Like, I don't think any of us particularly necessarily think that it will be back next year currently. Not that we really have known or heard anything that gives us that idea more than anyone else, but so we're kind of just embracing the fact that, this will be the last time so we're just kind of trying to put our all into it.
Sure. Now, of course, it felt like you had like a breaking point once again in the season. And it's like break the glass when everything, isn't going your way and take out Reinhardt.
Yeah.
And somehow it worked again. Why did it take so long to get back to the basics?
Well, it's not as if we didn't try it. Like, we did try Rein early this year. We didn't try it as much because we were quite, wanting to play meta as well. But the thing is that the Rein comp against like the Sombra Tracer stuff is really hard, and we probably because we were also focusing on other comps, right? Because at the beginning it was like we play Rein on certain maps and we play Dive everywhere else, so our attention was like split. But we couldn't figure out how to make the Rein work properly at the beginning of the season against that comp. Once we came back and we had 100% of our playtime on it, I'd say it took us maybe like a week, maybe not even, to figure out how to play against it, to the point that, I think we'd have been completely fine with playing play-ins on the previous patch because we were just beating every team pretty much in scrims, like all of the play-ins teams, that is. Even against the good teams, we were having good scrims and good results to the point that we were confident. Like the only play-ins team that I think we really struggled against towards the end of that last patch was Toronto. We didn't scrim Boston much, but Toronto were quite good against the Rein stuff on the dive. So yeah, I mean, once we went fully back into it and it was 100% of our attention, like it becomes a lot easier to figure out these things that feel impossible when you're only playing it on 1 or 2 maps of scrim.
For sure. So that's interesting. So were you even confident against Boston then, or did they not scrim you?
We only scrimmed Boston like once or twice, but we had confidence against them. I think like on that previous patch that we'd have done fine against them against that, because we were really good against the Monkey Sombra Tracer stuff towards the end. I think like we were really happy with the spot that the meta was in and the heroes that people were playing, and we were confident that we knew how to play it.
For sure. Okay, so you said you struggle a little bit against Toronto. To what degree were you splitting scrims? Were you losing them more? Like, how confident were you going into that last match?
Before the patch, like during the like the Monkey Sombra Tracer patch, right? So back then we were like splitting scrims against them, which is why before the patch came out and we knew it was like Orisa stuff, we were like 50-50 on Toronto. When the new patch came out, because we scrimmed them, I think I said this like on the scrimmed them like the majority like on the league interview. We scrimmed them. They were our main scrim partner going into this last week of play-ins. I think they had the better end of scrims by quite a bit actually. I think that's why they played the comp they did. Maybe a hot take here, but they played that comp that we scrimmed them on. They played the comp they played in the official, sorry, in scrims, and I think they won the scrim like 5-1 or 4-2, including like a full cap on Esperanza without us pushing a meter. And that was on our second to last scrim of the week, I think, against them. And I think they thought that they'd just completely cracked our comp down because the next scrim they didn't play that at all. They only played with opener that scrim. So I think they just didn't want to show us anymore because they thought they'd just beaten us. I think they thought they'd cracked us, when in reality we just didn't play that well that scrim. Can happen, you know. So I think it ended up helping us actually, that scrim. Losing that scrim, we came to the conclusion after the game that we're pretty sure it helped us because there's no way they should have picked Esperanza against us. Like, if they went New Queen Street and they played their soldier stuff, that's the best map in the game for it. They beat us in scrims on it multiple times, even when we were playing well. So I don't know why they didn't, but I think they thought they'd figured us out earlier on in the week with that comp because they won a scrim on it, just to find out that maybe not the case when it came to the official.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one particular thing that was sort of paradigm shifting. It makes some sense, right? It's not like you made pigs fly, but it's still very unintuitive that Rein worked so well on Gibraltar, right? How did you figure that out? Was that just like a development of the sim portals? Did you sit down and like really try to find those locations, or what was the process of really mastering the Rein comp on Gibraltar?
I think the Rein on Gibraltar's been cooking for quite a bit actually. I don't know if we played it much last year. We probably played it like once or twice. So it kind of just became a trial and error thing. And the thing is that when you're playing like outlandish on a map like that, no one can ever practice against it. Like the only practice they get is versus you. So when you're playing it in an official and you've not scrimmed them at all, they're automatically on the back seat. So it just became a case of like finding out what's good in what situation. Like, oh, if we have this ult, we can instantly go here. If we don't, then we have to do this first. If they have this, then we can just do this. And like it's just I think the main reason it was such a good map 5 for us is because we've played that map so many times. We all know all the TPs, we know all the strats, we know everything. We could play that map with our eyes closed basically at this point, I feel like. Which is why I'm so annoyed they've removed it from playoffs pool.
For sure, yeah.
But it's like it's why having escort map 5 and given the pool is so good for us, because it's like map 5 everyone's nervous, but it's like we're literally playing our best map.
For sure, yeah. Do you think Shimbali being back in is a boon?
It's a really good map for us. It's a really good map. Every map they removed, I'm pretty sure was one that we were good at. It was like Oasis, Gibraltar. I forget what hybrids they removed, but I know they were ones that we were more comfortable on. I think Blizzard World coming in is pretty good for Rein as well, actually. King's Row is okay for Rein, obviously. So it's not terrible, but had to get rid of Gib. Had to. We'd have won the league if not.
Okay, let's talk about it, because the playoffs of course are coming up. The top 3 teams had some head start in the North American region, already being able to practice on that patch and figuring something out. We heard, the Zarya, Genji, Sojourn, Baptiste, and Lucio comp has some dominance and is being played by a lot of teams, or rather, I think a majority of those 3 teams. So, have you practiced into that? Can you confirm that is something that, a lot of teams are playing right now? And how does the Rein play into that?
We've only scrimmed 2 our teams so far. One of them played it. It's not great into Rein. It's just not. I think everyone will realize that very quickly. Like I imagine the leaks and stuff just from scrims will mean that no one plays it against us, because when we played it in the one scrim we played against so far, it just wasn't easy for the Zarya at all. There's just better heroes. So I think we're probably in a position where every team's going to have a specific thing they want to do against us going in, which is good for us because they won't get to practice it as much, If you're Boston and you have to, for your first game, you have to practice your anti-Rein stuff, and then after that you got to go into Spark or Atlanta, I doubt you're very happy, So I think Zarya will probably get played quite a bit from the other teams, from everything I've heard and from the very little I've seen, but I don't think it'll get played much into us.
You're in a peculiar situation, because I imagine, we know what Chris said about teams pre-booking scrims weeks in advance. You're not the team that plays the archetypical comp that a lot of teams get, universal practice out of. You're admittedly, which is maybe good for you guys, on the other side of the, I would say, stronger part of the bracket, as it looks.
Definitely, 100%.
There's also Dallas on the other side, which on paper should be a weak team, but probably in this patch, if Zarya is a comp, right, should be much improved. So, how does Scrim work out for you guys? Are you getting quality practice, or is this something you struggle with?
We've not got as many scrims as we'd like. We're having scrim contenders quite a bit too. But we get 1 hour scrim a day at least. So as long as we get we can get the good practice from that. The thing is with the Rein stuff, especially at the start of a new patch, it's all about figuring out all the things, all of the set plays and stuff. And once you figure that out, to an extent, there's a wall that can get hit where it's the comp can be 80% complete. This is how I see it. I don't know how everyone else sees it, but it's we can get 80% of the total knowledge, and then scrimming only just helps you get like that extra bit that helps you beat certain teams. Like, because it gets to a point where it's like, okay, if we play this comp on this map, we know we need to do this, and then it either works or it doesn't. We either play well enough to make it work or it doesn't. So it's not the worst thing in the world. I think we'll be fine. I don't think we'll suffer from like. I don't think we'll suffer from lack of scrims versus the other teams. I think the one a day will be more than enough to get us through.
For sure. How are you guys? When are you traveling? Have you already figured that out? And when you're arriving, what kind of scrim schedule you will get there?
I think we're traveling on the 26th.
Okay.
I think we're traveling on 26th. Yeah. I imagine we'll probably scrim a couple of the teams on the other side of the bracket, since I doubt day before anyone wants to scrim on their side as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's talk a little bit about predictions. You guys love a good prediction, right? I followed your Twitter. Like you try to submit that throughout the entire season. So let's see your prides. Of course, every competitor is compelled to say they are the favorites going into the playoffs, and I think that's a very good mindset to have. However, if you can't,
we're not the favorites.
Okay, fair. Who is the favorites then?
Florida. I think Florida 100% the favorites. I think they're the most flexible team. I think they can play the most comps at the high level. I think it's 100% possible they won't make it. Like, I wouldn't put my life savings on it or anything, but if I had to put my life savings on someone, it would have to be them. Like if gun to my head, I had to do it, I'd have to say that it's them, because they can just play the most comps to the high level than anyone else. So they're in the best position to be able to like play the best comps on the best maps and have the little advantage that matters when it comes to the really high level games.
So it sounds like you don't think this is like a situation where something is hard meta. We're still shifting around a lot, right? Like we're still being agile.
Yeah, it still seems quite flexible. I don't know. I've heard that every other team is just playing Zarya v Zarya, so maybe it's not flexible in that regard. But even that, I imagine Florida's really. I've heard they're really good at it, so I think they'll be fine. I mean, I've predicted that Florida will lose to Houston first game just to be spicy in our things this week, but like it wouldn't surprise me if Florida won. Like I think Florida are more likely to win. I just thought it'd be a funny pred to do.
Of course, like Florida came out recently, announced that they had signed Who Are You? How do you perceive these, late signings, and then also like the loophole of only getting to sign contenders players? Of course, that's a contenders player that almost made playoff qualification due to the APAC, how that worked. How do you think about this?
I don't know, because like on one hand it's like loophole in the rule, kind of cringe, it shouldn't happen. But on the other hand, it's like I kind of just I want the best teams and the best players to be in. So if it levels up the competition, people being able to do it, like, then I'm not against it, because at the end of the day, I just like playing high level Overwatch. I like watching high level Overwatch. I feel really bad for Checkmate, because I love Checkmate. I think he's really, really good. So I feel bad for him that he's just benched by a loophole. Like, if I was him, I'd be pissed. But yeah, it's like I both sides of it, like I do agree with one of the takes I've seen, that if you want to sign a specialist player, signing it just for the meta feels a bit cheap. Like, but at the same time, it's just going to be better Overwatch for everyone to watch and play. So who cares, enjoy the ride.
Sure, yeah. Now, what is also interesting is that you say Florida is very flexible, and they can play the most comps. And one thing that has been attributed to is someone in the tank position, right? Like, to me, it is weird that someone that is a primarily main tank player, right, is also showing flexibility into a position where he could feasibly hang also with the Zarya players in the league, right? And that Florida could be reasonably perceived to be the favorite, despite not having that hyper specialist. So, in your opinion, like if you had to evaluate someone's performance, do you think he's the MVP for you this year?
I think Chio is the MVP. I'm a Chio believer, but somehow not even nominated. I mean, it depends what you want to. I watched like the Chris interview he did with you, so it's like I think and I agree with him quite a bit. It's like it depends how you want to define the MVP. Like if you want to if you replace someone with like the next best tank, let's say Fearless or someone or Smurf, like other than Smurf, I don't know if any other tank can do what they've done on Florida and have it work, you know? So is he their most valuable player? Almost certainly, just because he allows them to do that, right? And then they're one of the better teams, so it makes sense for him to be MVP. Like it depends what you want to do. If you want to do it as like one of the best players, I think it has to be Chio. That guy is literally like just the best main support in the world, and it's not even close. The things that guy does, I mean, I just got off scrimming him. He's insane. The things that guy does is I don't know. It's not fair. It feels like they have an extra like half a player just because he's playing so well. I think Alfie, the fact that he didn't get nominated was insane. Actually, definitely deserved a nomination for MVP. Like 1,000,000%. That without Alfie, I think Washington are looking at like Valiant level season. Yeah, but I think I agree that someone probably deserves it out of the people that qualified. Like as much as I want it to be Lip because I think Lip is insane, it's like if you put someone else in instead of Lip, do they still have a similar season? I think it's closer than with someone. So I think he probably does deserve it. Yeah.
Sure. Now, of course, we also have the RoleStars. Is there do you have any crispy opinions where you're like, okay, this is probably not what the public thinks, and like I would nominate this guy to be, because in my mind, I think the popular picks, just to give you an idea, I generally don't think pro players have a good, or are inclined to read comments to the point that they understand public sentiment, right? So I think, generally speaking, like at the support role, you're looking at the Atlanta backline or Shu. I think for DPS, you're probably looking at the Atlanta DPS line. Is there anyone else in the NA? It's probably hard to say other than Alpha Yi, of course.
Yeah.
And then for tank, it's pretty clearly someone. And then I don't know who the runner-up would be, probably Smurf.
Yeah. Okay, firstly with RoleStars, I think the dual region split is stupid. Quite frankly, everyone knows that the level of play in APAC is lower than the level of play in NA.
Yeah.
It's just factual. I mean, like, it's just the way it is. So the fact that the auto 2 votes is dumb. For support, it has to be the Atlanta backline, but I think RuPaul should get it as well. I think RuPaul's had a really good year. I think he's really, really good. I think Violet or Shu, I'd be happy with. I can't really think of any other support where I'm like, that's jumping out at me. And admittedly, I don't watch much. I think Chorong's good. I think RuPaul definitely deserves over him though, and I don't know if I'd put Chorong over Shu or Violet.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched much APAC, so I'm just not going to say any APAC players. I think Alfie definitely. I think probably both of the Atlanta players. Maybe it's a hot take, but I feel like Happy's actually been pretty good. Merit is, I think Merit and Checkmate as well though. Like I actually think Checkmate deserves to be on there like over Lip. I think Checkmate's had a really good year. I'm a Checkmate believer.
Okay, that's spicy, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Checkmate believer. So I do Stalker, Checkmate, Alfie, and then either Lip or Merit, I think, is number 4. And then for tank, I think Smurf. Is it just 2 for tank? I would assume so, right? Or is it 4?
No, it's 4. It's 4. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think Smurf and someone have to be. I just think they're the 2 best tanks in the league. I think Fearless has been pretty good this year, actually. I don't think he's done bad. And then I guess it has to be Donghack. I don't. Screw it, I'll just say Hattie, Yeah, give it to my boy again.
Fair. I think there's some competition on the rookie role this year. I think that's probably the vote that will be the closest, as I perceive it. There are obvious candidates such as Donghack, such as Sugar Free. I think you would have to count in there. Spectra is a special case. It's a little weird to judge that just because he was in contenders beforehand in APAC and whatnot, and also there's not that many people that have a voting ballot that saw both regions and can accurately judge his performance. So do you have a clear rookie of the year?
I'm a Spectra believer.
Okay.
That guy he's just good across every single hero. I think he was probably the best Mei I've seen. I know maybe it wasn't. I know maybe that wasn't super clear in the official. I don't think he had the best game in the official, But I still think he played pretty well in the official, especially on like Midtown. But in scrims and stuff, on May he was just farming. I think he's really good at Echo. I think even his tracers look good. When he was on Genji and scrims against us on the last patch, he was really good. So I think for me, it has to be him. I was a knife believer for like the first 2 weeks he was on Paris before they mental boomed again. I was a knife believer for that period. But yeah, for me, it has to just be Spectra. I think Sugar Free will get it just because Vancouver played Nanoblade for the last like 2 weeks, so you just got highlight clips. Everyone's like, "Oh, he's so good! he killed 5 with Nanoblade. He's got to get it." But I'm a Spectre believer.
For sure. Do you think there are any players other than Alpha Year that are ridiculously underrated? Just like nobody seems to talk about them.
I do think Spectre's a bit underrated as well. Not to harp on about him. I don't know if I can think of anyone else that jumps out at me. I'm sure there is one or two that. I think Creative had a couple really good games this year, actually. I haven't watched all of the New York games and stuff, but I think I saw a couple really good things from Creative this year. I can't really think of anyone else that jumps out. If you want to talk underrated, look at my boy, my man Landon McGee behind me. That guy is underrated to an extreme. Yes. He just is the best BAP. I don't care about Shu or Violet. That guy is the best BAP on the planet.
Very good, very good. One thing that stands out a little bit to me is, okay, fair, you've given the laurels to Smurf, but it feels like a team that almost, made top 3, is top 4, made it into through play-ins and first seed. I feel like there should be more talk about Boston, especially like a team that has so many, prior champions and like elite players. Feels like they never show up in these, award talks or like, favorites for playoffs or whatnot. Why are they so quote unquote forgettable, but while being the most accomplished team on paper?
I think it's just because I don't know. I think there's a real possibility that Boston are actually the best team in our side of the bracket right now, firstly. But I think for the rest of the season, like, for the first stage and stuff, I think they've just been the best of the rest type beat, if you get what I mean, where it's just like, oh, they're clearly a level above every team below them, but they're not fully there for the teams above them. Like they can beat them, but it doesn't feel like they're consistently on that same level to me on that patch at least. But yeah, I mean, obviously they're really good. Smurf, I think Smurf is insane. I think they're all insane. They're all really good at the game. So I'm not 100% sure why people don't talk about them. I don't know if it's just because it might just be a case. It genuinely might just be a case of, because they haven't won these big games, people think the other teams are better. Like if we were living in a world where Boston had won an extra 2 of the games against the top 3 teams, then maybe it's Houston we're forgetting about instead. But maybe just because of the way results are gone, people don't talk about them as much. But I mean, they're obviously a really good team. Like they've got really good players. You have to be scared of them. You can't just brush them off. I don't think anyone will do that. And I do think right now that they're probably the best team in our bracket. Obviously haven't scrimmed Spark, but I do think they're better than Atlanta right now.
For sure. I guess that's the last question. We got to talk about the defending champions, right? Feels like they snuck in the weaker region in the last seed. On paper, they should be the weakest team. This is Zarya meta, and this is HIMbin, right? Do you think they have Dark Horse potential?
HIMbin has to get RoleStar for tank, by the way. I don't watch. I've watched a little bit of APAC for that. Going way back to that, I completely forgot HIMbin existed for a second. He has to get RoleStar. Yeah, they've got the Dallas. Dallas are Dallas. Like, Dallas have the best like hive mind and stuff in the league by far. I think they're one of the best coached teams in the league. And if every team is just playing Zarya, Genji, Soja, Mirror, that's you could argue that's pretty good for Dallas, HIMbin is him. Yeah, I'm happy they're not on our side of the bracket. I think the only thing I'd change from our side of the bracket is I'd like get rid of Boston for like Infernal. Other than that, I dodged all the really good teams actually. Like I think we've dodged all the teams that it's a bit like don't want to play them. But I think it's really possible they make it out of their side of the bracket.
Sweet. Then we thank you for the interview and best of luck in the playoffs.
Thank you.